This week's parsha, Parshas Vayeshev, there are a lot of difficult issues to grapple with. Let's talk about one small point which may be of some interest, and we'll see how it fits into the entire pattern of the parsha. Yaakov Avinu sent Yosef to check on his brothers to Shechem. So Rashi says, Makom Muchen Lepranos. Shechem was a place that was prepared for trouble. Sham Kilkel Shvatim. This is where the Shvatim messed up. They stole Yosef. Sham Ina was Dina. This is where Dina was abducted. Last week's parsha. Sham Nechel Kamalchus Beis David. This is where the kingdom was divided between Rechavam and Yeravam after the death of Shlomo HaMelech. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Vayelech Rechavam Shechem. The Rechavam went to establish his Malchus in Shechem, and that of course was the division of the kingdoms. At first glance, it would seem that Chazal are telling us that these three different Puroniais have a connection. Between the second and the third, the connection is very apparent, because both relate to the schism of the Bnei Leah and the Bnei Rachel. In other words, the Shvatim sold Yosef. Of course, they were led by the Bnei Leah. Yosef was the son of Rachel, and that disagreement led to that split. And ultimately, there was a similar schism hundreds of years later that resulted in the division of the Malchus between Rechavam, who was from Shevet Yehuda, and Yeravam, who was from Shevet Ephraim. That we understand. But at first glance, the Inu as Dina, the fact that Dina was abducted, seems not to fit. Hard to imagine what the connection between the other two and the abduction of Dina is. Though strangely, we find that there is a connection, because both in the story of Dina and in the story of the Mechiras Yosef, Shimon and Levi feature prominently. And Rashi mentions this at several points of the story, but especially in Parshas Vayechi, that when Yaakov Avinu gave, I guess you could call it a blessing, or not so much of a blessing, to Shimon and Levi, and he says, Shimon and Levi Achim, they are brothers. So Rashi points out that twice in history, both in the destruction of the city of Shechem and in the conspiracy to do away with Yosef, Shimon and Levi joined. And there, the Rashi proves it, because it says in the pasuk that as Yosef approached, it says that one brother said to the other brother that let's kill him. And Rashi makes a cheshbon. Who could these two brothers have been? It couldn't have been Reuven. Reuven wasn't there, and it couldn't have been Yehuda for different reasons. Therefore, it had to have been Shimon and Levi. So Shimon and Levi were the ones that were involved in the Mechiras Yosef. They were the ones, of course, who destroyed the city of Shechem. And when Yaakov Avinu gave the klala, and he said, "O Rapam Kiyaz, cursed is their anger, for it is fierce," and he mentions Ki ba'apam harbu ish u'ratzanim ikru shar, that in their anger they killed a man and they tried to uproot a bull. So Rashi says ish refers to the people of Shechem, and even though it was a large population, they were considered in Yaakov Avinu's eyes like a single person, like an ish. And the shor, of course, is a reference to Yosef. As the pasuk says, Bukhar shor hodor lo. So mamish, in one breath, Yaakov criticizes them for their actions in Shechem and their actions against Yosef. So apparently there is some connection between the story of Dina and the Mechiras Yosef. We'll have to try and explore this. But putting all that in the back burner, let's turn to a very famous Rashi in the beginning of this week's parsha. The parsha begins with the words Vayeshev Yaakov. Yaakov settled in the land of Canaan. So Rashi brings the Medrash, which says that the Bikesh Yaakov in Leishe B'Shalva. that Yaakov Avinu wanted to dwell in tranquility, in peace and quiet. So Kapatzol of Rogues Oshel Yosef, so the tremendous distress over the story of Yosef leaped upon him. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said basically as follows: Tzadikim of Akshan Leish B'Shalva, the righteous want to live in tranquility. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo dayan letzadikim ash mesukun lahem lo'olam haba. It isn't enough the rest and tranquility of Olam haba. El Shem Avakshim Leish B'Shalva Olam Hazeh. They want to sit b'shalva in this world. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu demonstrated to Yaakov Avinu that it doesn't work that way. Now, to understand, when Yaakov Avinu wanted to live in peace and quiet, in shalva, it wasn't shalva for the sake of shalva. Undoubtedly, Yaakov had plans to engage in learning Torah and tefillah and the Vayeshev Hashem, so he wanted a peace of mind, peace and quiet, and we can certainly sympathize with that. At first glance, we wouldn't have a taina, we wouldn't have a grievance with Yaakov for wanting shalva. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu has other things in mind. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides that in this world, a person's job is not to meditate and reflect and pray and study in tranquility. A person's job in this world is to be nisnasa, to be tested. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends the challenges. And therefore, the tzaddikim wanting to sit b'shalva is really not going to happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, that's for Olam haba. In Olam hazeh, I'm going to send challenges your way. We pointed out in past years that the rogues Doshel Yosef is not another challenge, just another one of those challenges. But the idea is, this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't teach Yaakov Avinu, because Yaakov Avinu, because of his desire to sit b'shalva, that's how the whole crisis started. We pointed out that the Yaakov Avinu did not deal with the issues in his household. In other words, there was a brewing contention, there was a brewing feud between the brothers, and Yaakov Avinu could have been more active in involving himself in settling this, and instead Yaakov only applied a band-aid solution. That when Yosef came with the second dream, so Yaakov says, he screamed at Yosef in front of the other brothers as if to say, can such a thing happen? I and your mother are going to bow down to you. And Rashi explains that, of course, his mother wasn't alive anymore, so it can't be. So Yaakov poo-pooed it, thinking that will settle the whole feud. But in reality, it was not enough. Yaakov Avinu should have intervened. He should have involved himself. He should have made his own intentions clear. And he wanted to sit b'shalva, so he didn't do what had to be done, and as a result, the Mechiras Yosef took place and all the distress that followed. So the story of Yosef is not simply that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending a Nisayan to Yaakov Avinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing him, this is the consequence of your wanting to sit b'shalva. You sit b'shalva, things are going to fall apart because you weren't on top of them. But there are a couple of things with this Rashi that still require understanding. One is that why was it just at this juncture of Yaakov's life he had this interest in living b'shalva? After all, he was over 100 years old at this time. And we don't find before this, it doesn't seem before this, Yaakov had this desire to have peace and quiet. Okay, maybe he reached retirement age, but it's hard to understand, was there something that brought this about? Was there some new circumstance which motivated him to seek this type of shalva? There's also another question which we have to explore, which is this, that what Chazal seem to be telling us is that, in a sense, the whole story of the Mechiras Yosef can be blamed on Yaakov Avinu. In other words, for some reason, it's Yaakov Avinu's fault. In this case, the Chazal are blaming it on the fact that Yaakov wanted to sit b'shalva. You want to sit b'shalva? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll show you. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sprung the rogues Oshel Yosef upon him. In other places, Chazal says something else. The Gemara in Shabbos says, a person shouldn't show favoritism, because you see, Yaakov showed favoritism to Yosef over the other brothers, and for a small amount of trim on the Kseinas Passiv, the entire Golos Mitzrayim was Nizgalgel. So Yaakov was blamed for something else there. But whichever way we go, like the Rashi or like that Gemara, it seems that Yaakov Avinu is being blamed. This Lachar is a steer to a different Gemara. There's a Gemara in Shabbos and Daf Peites, which says the Roy Yaakov Leirin the Mitzrayim b'shal shalosh shel barzel. The Yaakov really should have been taken down to Mitzrayim in iron chains, because there was a gzeira, there was a decree that was made hundreds of years before. HaKadosh Baruch Hu informed Avram Avinu that you should know ki ger yezarach be'eretz lo lahem, that your children will be enslaved in a foreign land, and v'avod avinu osam, they'll be tortured for 400 years. There was a gzeira. And this gzeira could have come about in many ways. So it could have come about that Yaakov Avinu would have been taken prisoner and brought down to Mitzrayim in iron chains. Ella says, Moshe schuso garam lo. Yaakov was zeiche, he had the merit that he should have gone down to Mitzrayim to be reunited with his son. And the Gemara brings the pasuk which calls this avosos ahava. He was brought down with ropes of love, meaning because of his great love for Yosef, that's why he went down to Mitzrayim. So we seem to have a steer in Chazal. On the one hand, Chazal seems to say that Yaakov is somehow to blame in the entire episode because he did something wrong, whether it was his desire to live b'shalva or whether it was because he was mashana b'nai ben abanim, he showed favoritism. So Yaakov was at fault, and as a result, the entire story snowballed and he went down to Mitzrayim. On the other hand, Chazal seems to say, that really he had to go down anyway, and it was a schus. Yaakov Avinu was zeicha that instead of being taken prisoner and being brought down in iron chains, he was zeicha that it should be such a way that he should be reunited with his beloved son. So which is it? Is there a chet in the part of Yaakov Avinu? Or on the other hand, is it a schus of Yaakov Avinu that his coming down to Mitzrayim came about this way? The truth is, this same contradiction is really a contradiction that is dealt with in the other Svarim. The Maral, in the 9th parak of the Gevuras Hashem, says, Yesh Oimrim, there are some who say that the entire Golos Mitzrayim was an Einesh for the Chet and Mechiras Yosef. And the Maral says that from Chazal we see the exact opposite. Because Chazal say, for example, there's a pasuk in this week's parsha which says, Vayishlacheu me'emek Chevron, that Yaakov sent Yosef from the valley of Chevron. So Chazal asked the question that Chevron is not in a valley, Chevron is in a mountain. So what does it mean from the valley of Chevron? So Rashi says, it's based on the Gemara in Sot and Tafid Aleph, it's me'etza amuka shel oyesay tzadik hanikvar b'Chevron. It's to fulfill the very, very deep plan that was revealed to that tzaddik, Avram Avinu, who's buried in Chevron. In other words, the fulfillment of the bris bein habesarim had to come about. So how did HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring it about? HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought it about that Yosef should be sent to visit his brothers and owned to be sold, and that's how he came down to Mitzrayim. So it isn't that the Mechiras Yosef is the cause of the Golos Mitzrayim. It's that the Golos Mitzrayim is the cause of the Mechiras Yosef. Because there had to be a Golos Mitzrayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought it about this way. So the Maral says that the real pshat in the cause for the Golos Mitzrayim is, as the Gemara says in the Darchei, it was really because of something that was flawed in Avram Avinu. And the Gemara says there were 3 flaws in Avram Avinu. One is that he questioned when HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised him Eretz Yisrael. Avram said, how do I know that I will inherit it? Another flaw in Avram Avinu is that Asangaria b'Talmidei Chachamim, that when his nephew Lot was taken captive, he drafted his Talmidim to go and fight to save Lot. And the third flaw of Avram Avinu was that when the people of Stone were liberated by Avram in that war against the kings, he could have been machnis them, he could have brought them under the wings of the Shechina, and he failed to do so. So that was a third flaw. And Maral demonstrates that all these 3 are really flaws in Emunah, and therefore there had to be a correction. Because since our Emunah comes as an inheritance from Avram Avinu, if there would have been a flaw in his Emunah, that would have become an even greater flaw in the Emunah of his descendants, and therefore there had to be a corrective. The corrective is the experience of the Golos Mitzrayim, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is really the great demonstration of divine power, and this is the chizuk, this is the strengthening of our own Emunah. But Maral says that the causes for the Golos Mitzrayim come way back from Avram Avinu. And the Mechiras Yosef is just the way that it was brought about. So it's not that the Mechiras Yosef is the cause of the Golus Mitzrayim. The fact that there had to be a Golus Mitzrayim, which was decreed before, was the cause for the Mechiras Yosef. But it happens to be that the Zohar Chodesh, in this week's Parsha, says the opposite. The Zohar Chodesh makes a cheshbon, that we know that the Jews were in Mitzrayim for 210 years. And the Zohar makes the following cheshbon, that there were 10 Shvatim, 10 brothers involved in the sale of Yosef. Yosef was taken away from his father for 22 years. And therefore each of the 10 was guilty for denying Yaakov the pleasure of Yosef's company for 22 years. So 22 times 10 is 220. So really the Golos of Mitzrayim should have been 220 years, the Zohar says. But the 10 had a schus, or at least there was a reason that the Beis Din Shalmala had mercy, because it was very distressing to them that they died in Mitzrayim. So therefore they got a year off for that. And therefore, instead of being exiled for 220 years, they were exiled for 210 years, which of course is the duration of the Shibud Mitzrayim. So it comes to the Zohar is explicit that the Golus Mitzrayim was a consequence of the Mechiras Yosef, and even the number of years correspond. That they were guilty of a crime which deserved the punishment of 220 years, and 10 years they got off because they were punished in a different way, and therefore it was 210 years, but it seems that the Zohar is taking the position that it's a consequence of the Mechiras Yosef, which is a stira, of course, to the other Maimer Chazal, which says that to the contrary, that it was a decree beforehand, and the whole Mechiras Yosef was Vayeshev Me'em Chevron, was to fulfill the deep counsel that was revealed to Avraham Avinu. So how do we reconcile that? Essentially, this is the same question as we asked about Yaakov Avinu, the same contradiction. In other words, is Yaakov Avinu, in a sense, at fault, that whatever he did wrong was at the cause of the Golus Mitzrayim? Or did the Golus Mitzrayim have to afflict Yaakov anyway, and therefore that it should come about that the Mechiras Yosef really was a schus? And the answer to all these questions is really a medrash Tanchuma in this week's parsha. Medrash Tanchuma brings a pasuk in Tilim, which says, "L'chu chazu mifalos Elokim." Behold the works of God. Noira alila al bnei Adam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is noira alila over mankind. Now alila means a pretense. Noira alila means he is wondrous in creating pretenses and is dealing with human beings. So what does this mean? So the Medrash says like this, gives a mashal. There was a man who wanted to divorce his wife. So he was about to go home, so before he went home he commissioned the get, so he'd have to get ready to give to his wife. So he came into the house, he already had the get. He's ready to give the get to his wife. So he's looking for an excuse, a pretense, to give her the get. So Amrullah, so he said to her, Mizgali Kaish Ashta, says, blend me a cup of wine that I can drink. And in those days they used to blend the wine with either cold water or with hot water, but not lukewarm water. So Mazgalo, she blended the cups. She blended the wine. He took the cup. He takes the get out of his pocket and says, here's your get. So Amrullah, she said to him, Pishi, what did I do wrong? Amrullah, see me to get out of here. The cup is lukewarm. So you didn't use hot water. So Amrullah, so she said to him, did you know that I was going to make a lukewarm cup of water? That you already had the get written in your hand? I mean, you came home with the get. So how did you have the get? You didn't know I was going to do it. It was a pretense. Because you want to divorce me anyway. So you're looking for an excuse. The whole thing is an excuse. So it says that likewise, and the Medrash gives several examples, but one of the examples it gives is this, is Kach HaKadosh Baruch Hu hayamavakesh l'kayim gzeras yadei ateidah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to fulfill the decree of yadei ateidah. You should know that the Jews will be enslaved 400 years. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a pretense. The pretense is that the brothers should be jealous of Yosef, they should sell Yosef, they should go down to Mitzrayim. V'yodel l'Mitzrayim u'paru asashtar, and they went down to Mitzrayim and they paid up the debt. So the whole thing is a pretense. L'kach nemar, that's what the pasuk says. V'Yosef hurad Mitzrayim, he was brought down to Mitzrayim, having noira alila. So this is an illustration of the concept of noira alila. So what does it mean? So let's go back to the mashal. This man decided to divorce his wife. Why did he divorce his wife? She didn't do anything wrong. He came to a decision that she's not my soulmate. She's not my bazug. She's not my bashert. So if you think about it for a minute, it means that if she's not bashert to be my wife, she is bashert to be not my wife. It's really the same thing. So the every figure is that it's min hashamayim. It's exera shamayim that we not be married. She's not the one. She's not the one that the Bas Koil announced 40 days before my conception. So therefore it's min hashamayim. So I can't just give her a get. Can't come home and say, listen, I decided that it's not min hashamayim and we should be married. So you have to look for a pretense. So you found a pretense, found the next thing she did something wrong. Right? She called his bluff and she said, what do you mean? So the fact you wrote the get shows you knew you were going to give it even before I did the thing that was wrong. So it's a pretense, it's an excuse. So it's the same thing over here. Right? That when HaKadosh Baruch Hu decrees something, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed there be a Golus Mitzrayim. Why was there meant to be a Golus Mitzrayim? Perhaps it was because of the flaw in Avraham Avinu's Emunah, as the Gemara in the Darchei says. So it was decreed well before Yaakov and well before Yosef. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings it about through an alila. He brings it about through a pretense. Meaning, he causes or allows events to occur which would justify and explain the unfolding events as if they were a function of choices that were made at the time. So therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed the story of the Mechiras Yosef to unfold in the way that it did, so that anybody that was a casual observer would say, well, of course, the Golus Mitzrayim is the consequence of the Mechiras Yosef. But it's really an alila, it's just a pretense to bring about the fulfillment of the decree. That's what the Medrash says. So the truth is, it's true. Both are true. It's really from beforehand, and therefore it's really, as the Gemara says, because of what Avraham Avinu did, and the whole Golus Mitzrayim is Vayeshev me'emek Chevron, it's me'etza amuka, of that tzaddik, a cover of Chevron, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought it about in such a way as the Zohar Chadash demonstrates that anyone looking at the situation would say, oh, there's a perfect correspondence between what the brothers did to Yaakov and what they ultimately suffered in Mitzrayim, and therefore it's clearly a consequence of the Mechiras Yosef. Like it was with Yaakov Avinu. Because of course, really it was meant to happen anyway, and fakert. It could have been much worse, and it was only Yaakov's chus then able to be as pleasant as it was, that he should come down to Mitzrayim to be reunited with his son. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it ba'alila that it should look as if Yaakov Avinu caused it either by showing favoritism or by being mevakish leishi b'shalva, however you understand it. And the $64,000 question is, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do a thing like that? In other words, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing what he's intent on doing, why make a pretense? Why make it look as if it's not really a Gzera Shamayim, rather it's a consequence of things that we did? Now the answer is, I think, as follows. That the great challenge to Emunah, to our belief in Hashgacha, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, manages the world, is exactly this, that we have the intuition that our choices are genuine choices. When we make decisions, we choose careers, we choose courses of action, the choices seem to have real consequences. We intuit that had we chosen differently, there would be different outcomes. And yet, how can that be? If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really running the world, then we should say, whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed is going to happen no matter what. Because we all have the sense that if I get up today and go to work, I'll earn my day's pay. If I stay in bed, I won't earn my day's pay. But if a person's mezainas, as Chazal say, are ktsuvim, they're fixed from the Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, then it should make no difference whether I go to work or not go to work. Either way, I should make money. So, how do we understand? Are we living in a world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs things? Or are we living in a world that our choices are genuine and there are consequences, real consequences to our choices? And this is a very, very difficult thing to reconcile. And this is probably the greatest challenge to Emunah. The fact that we all have this intuitive sense that our choices make real differences, that there are genuine consequences to our choices, leads us to believe that we're living in a world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu isn't running things. Because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was running things, our choices shouldn't make a difference. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows sometimes that there are events which are clearly gzeiros. It's clearly decreed min hashamayim, and yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings them about through choices that we make, so that we can see that even when we're making choices, nevertheless, really the consequences of those choices are a function of the gzeira shamayim. So, for example, in the mashal by the get, you'd think that the man is divorcing his wife because the water was lukewarm. But that can't be, because we know that the get was written beforehand. So we know that isn't the real reason. By the Golos Mitzrayim, it looks like the Golos Mitzrayim is a consequence of the Mechiras Yosef. But that can't be, because it was foretold to Avraham Avinu a couple of hundred years earlier. So therefore, we see this amazing thing. We know that it's a Gzeira Shamayim, because we know it was foretold to Avraham Avinu, and yet it seems that it's all a consequence of the actions of Yaakov and the brothers of Yosef. So this is to impress upon us this truth. The fact that we do make choices and we exercise bechira doesn't mean that by definition HaKadosh Baruch Hu is uninvolved and disengaged from the running of the world. Somehow the two are reconciled. How exactly is beyond me. That's a mystery that I can't answer. But it's a fact that even things that are nigzer min hashamayim nevertheless come about through choices that we make. The question is this. The question is that this idea, reconciling these two thoughts, can lead a person to an error. And the error is that, in fact, our choices are only illusions. That the reality is that we're not making choices. It's only we seem to be making choices. We think we're making choices. But in reality, everything is determined, and everything happens the way it's meant to happen, al pi the gzeira shamayim, and our bechira is essentially nothing more than a mirage. It's not true. And that leads to a tremendous passivity, because when a person has this epiphany that his choices really make no difference, so what's the point of making choices? Because what's going to happen is going to happen in any case, and therefore, why should we bother making choices? Why should we bother putting up a fight and exerting effort? What's going to happen is going to happen anyway. And that's a mistake. But the reconciliation of these two ideas is not that Atzas Hashem Yisokum and our Bechira is only an illusion. It's much more complex. It's that at the same time that we're exercising choices, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is managing the world, but our choices are real choices. And make real differences. And there are real consequences. But it would seem that that is the idea which underlies the Bikesh Yaakov Leishe B'Shalva, that he reached a point in his life where he understood that whatever success he had achieved was really not a consequence of anything that he did, that all his efforts would not have brought about his successes, and everything was al pi gzeira shamayim. And at that point he said, so what's the point of working, trying, fighting, struggling? I can submit to the Ratzon Hashem, and I can live b'shalva. It's almost like the story I once heard about a mashulach. That there was a mashulach, I shouldn't call him a mashulach, he was a araman, a poor man. He was collecting for himself. And someone went to him and said, you know, he was in Eretz Yisrael, says there are not a lot of people with money in Eretz Yisrael, so you're not going to make a lot of money going around in Eretz Yisrael. Why don't you go to America, and there are Gvirim, and you can make more money there. So he said like this, he said, you know, I see what happens. These people go to America, and they knock on doors, and they have bizyonis, and they don't make any money, sometimes not even enough to cover their flights back. and they fly back to Eretz Yisrael dejected, and somehow miraculously, whatever it is they need, they get b'derech nes, and it all works out in the end. So what's the point of going? I'll stay here, and however it happens to them, it'll happen to me. That's a cogent argument. But the point is that you reach a point in your life that you tell yourself, what's the point of fighting and struggling? It says, what'll happen will happen. So now I'm free. I can daven, I can learn, I can meditate, I can reflect, I can philosophize. I don't need to struggle, I don't need to fight. And that's the Bikesh Yaakov Vayeshev B'Shalva. But it's a mistake, because our choices have real consequences, and there are real nisyonos, and we have to grapple with them. And therefore the Pasuk tells us that there were issues in Yaakov's home that he felt, okay, they'll take care of themselves. I don't need to be involved. It'll work out however it works out. Right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him that no, it doesn't work that way. Right? Kalpas Lovros Doshel Yosef. It's not an approach. But a person in Olam Hazeh, at least, has to engage and grapple with the challenges that are sent his way. And otherwise, the consequences are catastrophic. The question is this: when did this really begin? When did this Yaakov Avinu's wanting to live b'shalva, when did it start? The truth is, if we look back in Parshas Vayishlach, as we see that it really began in last week's Parsha. Now, it's an amazing story, the story of Shem and Dinah. We can't go through all the details now, but when we read that story, we see an amazing thing, that Yaakov Avinu's daughter is abducted, and we would have thought that Yaakov Avinu himself should have mustered up an army or taken decisive action to try and save Dinah. It says Yaakov Avinu waits. V'hechrish Yaakov ad bayam. He's quiet, he's silent, and he waits until the sons come. And finally, Hamor and Shechem come to negotiate, and the Yaakov doesn't even answer them. It says the sons answer him. And the Ramban is bothered by the kasha. The Ramban says it was such a humiliation, such a bizoyan, that the sons didn't let Yaakov speak. It would have been a bizoyan for Yaakov even to speak to Hamor and Shechem. So the sons took the initiative. They should respond. But Yaakov Avinu seems uninvolved. And the most amazing thing is that in the end, when Shimon and Levi finally do the deed, and Yaakov Avinu is critical of them, they respond, they talk back, and they say, Hakazona Yasas Hachisenu, but our sister should be like a zona, and we should sit back and do nothing. And that's the end of the conversation. Yaakov doesn't respond. It's almost as if Yaakov has stepped back. Now the children are in charge. The amazing thing is, the Chassam Sofer points out something which is just amazing. That this actually was the practice of Shechem, the city of Shechem. It's just one of these things that you'd never notice in a million years if the Chassam Sofer didn't point it out. But it says that when Yaakov came to Shechem, he bought the field where his tent was pitched. Who did he buy it from? He brought it from the sons of Hamor, who was the father of Shechem. He didn't buy it from Hamor. He bought it from the sons of Hamor, Hamor being the father of Shechem, meaning from Shechem and his brothers. So Chassam Sofer points out that apparently in those days, Hamor, who was ostensibly the king of the city, he was uninvolved. He stepped back. He had handed everything over to his children. He'd handed everything over to his children. That's the way it was in that society. So the Chassam Sofer says that's why Hamor and Shechem thought they had a deal when the sons of Yaakov proposed the merger. That we should merge and practice bris milah, we'll join, and the Yaakov remained silent. So why did Hamor and Shechem think they had a deal? I mean, the son spoke, but the father didn't speak. So Chassam Sofer says, because that's the way it was in Shechem. In Shechem, the father stepped back, and the sons ran the family business. So they assumed that's how it was in the house of Yaakov Avinu. But also, the patriarch remained silent. and the children run the business. So as soon as the children said, this is the deal, we're willing to offer, if you practice bris milah, we'll intermarry, we'll become one nation, you can marry Dina. So they thought they had a deal. And that's why they went ahead and did what they did. And of course, Shimon and Levi took advantage of their weakness and slaughtered the city. But it may be more than that. It may be that bemis that was the case. That Yaakov Avinu actually did step back. Because when Yaakov came to Shechem, where this was a point in his life where he felt he had achieved the completion and perfection of his life. Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Ir Shechem. So Chazal say, Shalem B'gufo, he was physically intact. Shalem B'taraso, his chachma was intact. Shalem B'mamono, his possessions were intact. So Yaakov Avinu felt that he achieved the ultimate level of his life. At this point, he could sit b'shalva, he could step back, let the children take over, and of course, the consequences were what followed. But it may be that it's even more than that. It may be that it's not just, this is the point at which Yaakov stepped back, which of course was the cause of the subsequent calamities, because his not being engaged resulted in his not dealing with the tensions in Parshas Vayeshev, which ultimately resulted in the Mechiras Yosef, but it may be more than that. That here too, there may have been a sense on the part of Shimon and Levi that Yaakov Avinu was disengaged because the victim here was a daughter of Leah. Because in the beginning of the parsha, the pasuk makes the point of Vatei Dina Bas Leah. Rashi and all the Mefarshim are bothered. Why is the emphasis over here on Dina being Bas Leah? So Chazal say because Leah was a Yatzanis, she was the type that went outside, and therefore likewise Dina went outside to see the V'nai, and therefore because she went out to see, therefore she was seen, and she was abducted. And other Mefarshim say that the point is to explain why Shimon and Levi had a special interest, because she was a full sister. But it may be that there also was this sense. We know that in Parshas Vayeshev, it says that the brothers saw that Yaakov loved Yosef more than the other brothers, and therefore they hated Yosef. Now the truth is that it would seem, if you think about that pasuk, the anger, the resentment is misdirected. In other words, if they believe it's wrong that Yaakov showed favoritism to Yosef over them, their anger should have been at Yaakov, not at Yosef. But the way these things work often is, when it comes to the emotions, often we direct them to an acceptable object. Because we're not going to be angry at our fathers, we're not allowed to do that. So instead, we are angry at the brother who's the object of our father's affection. But in reality, there was a grievance with Yaakov. What's Yaakov showing favoritism to Yosef over the B'nai Leah? It may have been that this was Shimon and Levi's suspicion. That Yaakov Avinu, his passivity at the abduction of Dinah was not simply because, in a general sense, he wanted to be Yeshiv B'Shalva. It was specifically because, after all, it was just the daughter of Leah. It wasn't important enough to get excited about. If it was a daughter of Rachel, probably he would have been more excited. And this was at the root of Shimon and Levi's taina. This is our sister. Which is interesting, because if you look in the parsha, in the beginning of the story, when they first came back, they were indignant, not because it was their sister that was abducted. They were indignant because it was a Bas Yaakov. Ki nevala asa b'Yisrael lishkav es Bas Yaakov. Such a thing to rape the daughter of Yaakov. V'chein lo yasa. Such a thing can't be done. It can't be the daughter of Yaakov is going to be treated like that. And when they argue with Yaakov, right, they obviously can't make the argument to Yaakov. What do you mean? We should sit by and let this be done to a daughter of Yaakov? I mean, they can't be moicha on Yaakov's covet any more than Yaakov himself, right? If Yaakov himself felt that their attack was unwarranted, so they can't say that, no, we had to do it because we have to stand up for the honor of Yaakov. I mean, they should be more concerned for the honor of Yaakov than Yaakov? Can't be. So what do they say? No, but this is our sister. Right? This is our sister. And therefore that's why we're doing it. But the subtle implication is that their Taina and Yaakov is that our sister wasn't important enough to you because it was Leah's daughter and not Rachel's daughter. Mela, Shimon and Levi, right, their involvement in the story of Dinah and their involvement in the story of Mechiras Yosef really is the same Shayresh. And accordingly, that's why Shechem is the Makom Muchal Lepuranos. Because even in the story of Dinah, where there may be an issue of the Pirud of the Bnei Leah and the Bnei Rachel in that story, because maybe that was at the root of Shimon and Levi's grievance with Yaakov Avinu. But that's a little bit of conjecture. But I'll upon him, this is the idea that from that time that Yaakov was in Shechem, he had stepped back. He wanted to be Vayeshev B'Shalva. And as a result, there was the schism within Klal Yisrael that was able to form. Just as a remez to this, the Maharal says in several places that the word Echad, which is the word for one, Aleph Ches Daled, is a remez as follows. That Ches stands for the children of the Gvirais, the children of Leah and Rachel, which there were 8. Right? Rachel had 2, Yosef and Binyamin, and Leah had 6. Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. The Daled stands for the Bnei Ashvachas. Right? Bilhah had Dan and Naphtali, and Zilpah had Gad and Asher. So the Ches Daled, which is 12, stands for the 12 Shvatim. But what keeps them together is the Aleph, which is Yaakov Avinu. In other words, the unity of Klal Yisrael is Yaakov on top with the Ches and the Daled, with the 8 and the 4 Shvatim. That creates a unified Echad. Remove the Aleph, and the unity falls apart. When Yaakov Avinu wanted Leishay B'Shalva, he removed himself. That's how the schism formed among the children, which would have been avoided if Yaakov Avinu would have been more involved. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to impress us upon him. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him, you want to be Yosef B'Shalva, you want to disengage, the consequence will be the Kafetz Rog Zoshel Shel Yosef. And this is the important thing we have to understand. And exactly how this works is a mystery which no one can answer. To understand, yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu manages the world, there is Hashgacha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu supervises everything that happens, and Atzas Hashem Yisokum, everything is B'Hashgacha. Yet at the same time, our choices are not illusions. Our choices have genuine consequences. Which means that it's true that in the end, everything will come out in accordance with the divine plan. But the route, whether we get there the long way, the short way, the smooth way, the bumpy way, right, will depend on our choices to a great extent. So it's true that ultimately everything that results is a function of the Gzera Shamayim. How it comes about is a function of the choices we make. And therefore there are real differences. It isn't that our choices are merely an illusion. Our choices have real consequences, not in the ultimate result, but in the way in which we get there. In other words, how is Yaakov going to get down to Mitzrayim? Will he get down with Shal Shlo or Shal Barzo? Or will he get down Bavos or Shal Ava? This depends on choices that he makes and that his sons make. There are real consequences, not in the sense that history will take a different course. But in the short run, will it come about through this pathway or through this pathway, it'll make a difference. Our choices do make a difference at the same time that the world in a general sense is B'Hashgacha. The failure to understand that leads to a passivity, an unwillingness to engage with the world and deal with the challenges that come my way. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that's a mistake. You do that, Kafetz Rog Shel Yosef. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends the message that you see that the consequences are dire.